Okay, so what this video is going to be about is essentially the future of Social Security benefits when it comes to how and if there will be retribution or revenge against Social Security recipients by pharmaceutical companies. You know, pharmaceutical companies by kind of like their mini name, Big Farm, and that's because, to be fair, the entire industry is built up, created, and proffered pushed, made into like the billion upon billion-dollar industry that it is by fighting symptoms. So, the whole idea is that when we look at medical treatment, we know that from the mental impairment side, there's pretty much not really a cure to a lot of the things that are going on out there. If you have anxiety, they have some sort of medication for the symptoms. If you have depression, there's some sort of medication for the symptoms. But at the end of the day, big pharma's big thing is to go ahead and spend money where it matters to fight symptoms, but not the actual cause. Now, with that said, there's a bunch of new medical devices coming out that are used, such as headbands that go on the head to help people focus, have clarity of the mind, get rid of anxiousness, get rid of depression, etc. So big pharma is getting squished and pushed by these new innovative products that are coming out. Another thing to keep in mind is that pharmaceutical companies are getting a push from other nations. So if we go ahead and hop across the pond to the Europe side, if we go ahead and look at India, if we look at Australia, if we look at Israel, there's a lot of new technologies and a lot of new cures coming out for things that we just don't have in America. And they don't want them coming here because then they can't keep selling you or the government through Medicaid and Medicare or your private insurance a continuous medication that will essentially go ahead and take care of symptoms somewhat okay. Now, think about this. These new innovative products, these different countries are coming out with cures. They can go ahead and basically fix a lot of people that are, I say fix, but fix people that are disabled with some of the impairments that are out there. And then ultimately it will improve to the point where it can fix any impairment. Now, what is the big thing on the horizon that the pharmaceutical companies are most anxious about, which will actually end up causing the most retaliatory conduct against Social Security recipients? Well, there's this thing called CRISPR, and when you combine it with artificial intelligence, basically there's a big thing that happens. And what's interesting about it is that at the end of the day, they are now talking about and creating articles specifically about how CRISPR is going to change the marketplace for curing people's impairments. So they recently released an article specifically 7 diseases CRISPR, C-R-I-S-P-R technology could cure by Clara Rodriguez. And this is released by labbiotech.eu. And the main thing is, let me read to you some of them. They're coming out with cures that would not allow people to go into disability benefits because they wouldn't need them. They'd be able to continue to live their life. Here we go. CRISPR for cancer. Cancer is a complex, multifactorial disease, and a cure remains elusive. There are hundreds of different types of cancer, each with a unique mutation signature. CRISPR technology is a game changer for cancer research and treatment, as it can be used for many things, including screening for cancer drivers, identifying genes and proteins that can be targeted by cancer drugs, cancer diagnostics, and as a treatment. China spearheaded the first in-human clinical trials using CRISPR-Cas9 as a cancer treatment. The study tested the use of CRISPR to modify immune T cells extracted from a patient with late-stage lung cancer. The gene editing technology was used to remove that gene that encodes for a protein called PD-1 that some tumor cells can bind to block the immune response against cancer. This protein found on the surface of immune cells is the target of some cancer drugs termed checkpoint inhibitors. Now, a lot of you guys don't know about basically how this works, but the main thing is CRISPR will go ahead and use a sequence, and it can go in and attach to, part of the DNA code structure, right? And then it will go ahead and inhibit, increase, limit, strengthen some part of the DNA strand. And as a result of that, you get basically all kinds of things. You get gene editing, you get, basically with the cure for different types of cancers, because the cancer cells just can't manipulate, they can't, monopolize, they can't double up, they can't grow, etc. So in the future, what's causing a lot of impairments is, of course, some sort of issue where over time we have an environmental position where, okay, we have too much sun, or we get, too much toxicity from water, could be heavy metals, or basically we're born with it. It's congenital. Now, a lot of people go the religious route and they say, I don't want anything touching my DNA. And the reality with that is that's fine. It's all a choice. You get to choose at the end of the day. However, a lot of people are going to be choosing, of course, to have specific DNA editing applied to them so that they won't get that type of cancer, so that they won't have that particular impairment applied to them. Now, here's basically the thing. Let me give you the other ones that CRISPR is really, really frontlining on. So you have CRISPR for cancer, you have CRISPR for AIDS, you have CRISPR for, I think the next one was actually a favorite of mine with this, CRISPR for cystic fibrosis, you have CRISPR for, let's see what we got over here, for Huntington's disease, CRISPR for general blood disorders, and then, of course, over here, you've got CRISPR for COVID-19 and the future of CRISPR technology. All right, so let's talk about this real quick. There was a study done, which was very interesting, okay? Over here, first patient treated with personalized CRISPR therapy developed in just 6 months. So what they found was that basically they could go ahead and take the DNA sequence of the person using artificial intelligence technology and then personalize the specific thing that they would need to deal with that particular impairment and or issue. So here we go. And this was, I'll go through real quick. This is May 15th, 2025 by Andy Murdoch, very recent, okay? Leaders of the gene editing field joined forces to develop and administer the first on-demand CRISPR therapy for an infant with a rare metabolic disease. So this was an infant. They used CRISPR to edit the DNA sequence, and basically now they're going through the curing phase of this child having a regular life, okay? Since the development of CRISPR gene editing, leaders in the field have foreseen a future in which CRISPR could be used to repair any genetic disease, including the rare N of 1 diseases caused by mutations that medicine has never encountered. A new paper published today in the New England Journal of Medicine takes a big step toward making the vision of an on-demand CRISPR cure a reality. And that's basically where they can figure out what you're made of and then make a cure specific to what your needs are, okay? A team of physicians and scientists, including 5 researchers from the Innovative Genomics Institute at the University of California, Berkeley, achieved a historic milestone for the field. A personalized in vivo CRISPR therapy for an infant was developed and delivered to the patient in just 6 months. The patient, KJ, was born with a rare, severe genetic disease that affects 1 in 1.3 million newborns. This landmark case paves the way for a future with on-demand gene editing therapies for individuals with rare, until now untreatable, genetic diseases. Now, this is kind of like the Jesus effect, right? They figure out what's going on, they go up, they take what they need, and they go find essentially an editing option to go ahead and take, out something that would, cause this spread, cause this continuation. Quote, "This was a remarkable team effort," says Jennifer Doudna, founder of the IGI and recipient of the 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for a role in the development of CRISPR gene editing. The ability to develop an on-demand CRISPR therapy in such a short time opens a new era for treating previously untreatable genetic diseases. KJ was born with a genetic mutation causing a CPS1, which is a deficiency and ultra-rare disease of the urea cycle that prevented him from being able to break down proteins in food. This disease has a 50% mortality rate in infancy. Staying alive meant living in the hospital under constant monitoring, which, just to be fair, some of you guys are not thinking about this, it's expensive, very expensive to do that with a child in there, okay? Powerful nitrogen scavenging drugs and a protein-restricted diet were required to prevent toxic levels of ammonia building up in his body. At just 5 months old, he was placed on the liver transplant list, but when he was just over 6 months old, KJ received the first dose of his customized gene editing therapy. Early results show no adverse effects, improved symptoms, and a decreased dependence on medications. And that's the kicker right there. The decreased dependence on medications. And so I see, basically the idea that at the end of the day, right, just to be fair, a lot of people, a lot of you, chat, that'll be in the comments, use medication. And you have to use it to have the best day that you potentially could, because it's all, where are you going to be at on that day with your standard of living? Without the medications, you're down here. With the medications, you're up here. So the idea here is that they now, with AI, are able to more quickly figure out a solution to a lot of these problems. And it's tough. it's tough because, at the end of the day, you have a situation where, to be fair, people realistically, a lot of people are born with genetic, malformations. A lot of people are having issues with it. And what we want to see is a lot of healthy people getting healthier, right? That's the general direction. I know the idea here with, disability benefits, and I talk about, okay, here's how you achieve it. Here's how you create a more likely scenario where you get the benefits. But the reality is, somewhere down the line, 15, 20, 25 years, a lot fewer people are going to actually need them because they're going to have a lot of these cures out there. So that's kind of a really amazing, wonderful thing when it comes to this particular situation, because at the end of the day, we want to see more people with a cure than just medications propping up a mega multi billionaire industry. Christy Hughes, thank you for the $2 donation. That's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Okay, good. Let's see what else we got here. Now, gene editing can be used for all kinds of things. It can be used to regrow parts of the body. It can be used to fight diseases. It can be used to fight pretty much all kinds of things. Some of the worst ones that a lot of people don't even consider are fungus infestations. But, diseases, bacteria, funguses, genetic mutations, stuff like that. It can be used for every aspect of these. And the main thing that they usually use it for is trying to block a protein from allowing more of those cells or more of that thing to multiply and become a problem for an individual. But ultimately, when it comes to gene editing, they will be able to have humans regrow parts of their body. They will be able to have humans with almost like super like human abilities. And when I say that, a lot of people are like, well, that's ridiculous. There's no possible way that this could ever happen. There's no way. But the truth is, if you look at the animal kingdom and you look at all the different animals and some of the things that they do, how they have echolocation, how they have, certain features that do all these super sensitive things, you could essentially create humans with those. I'm not saying that we should, but I'm just saying the possibility is out there. Okay. So the main thing is, yes, they are using it. Yes, it's already successful. Yes, it is rolling forward. Yes, it is not something that I see slowing down. I see it going faster. Now, with that said, we see Warren, Wyden, Sanders have basically a big thing against RFK Jr. saying, hey, where are you at with these individuals known as big pharmaceuticals? Because at the end of the day, RFK's entire thing was like, hey, he's going to take on big farm. He's going to push against big farm. He's going to make big farm go to their knees and make things cheaper for the American people. So here's what happened. March 10th, 2025, Warren, Wyden, Sanders did a press RFK Jr. on big pharma influence following a Mar-a-Lago dinner. RFK Jr. joined Trump's $1 million dinners with pharma execs, raising questions about promises to clean up corruption and industry influence on key policies to lower drug costs. And remember, the whole big thing here was that Medicare is spending a lot of money. And the reality, just to be, and I want to be very straightforward with you guys, okay? Oh, Princess Diana, thank you for the second $2 donation. You actually did a $2 donation at the very, very beginning, so I definitely want to do a shootout. That's awesome, or shout out, a shout out, actually. So that's absolutely amazing. Please give her a like, guys, and do the. I see the little 5-star notation there. That's absolutely awesome. So again, Princess Diana has been with us for like a really long time, which is absolutely amazing. She's one of our longest members, subscribers, everything. So she's kind of like royalty in here. That's why she has like, Princess Diana with it. So indeed. So, all right. So here's what you basically need to know. There was the Democrats, and the Democrats are going against RFK Jr. And to be fair, right, Big Pharma supplies money to politicians who are in the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. So it's not like, they're not funding both sides. They fund both sides because they got to play the game. Now, here's the deal. Washington, D.C., U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren, Senate Finance Ranking Member Ron Wyden, Ranking Member Bernie Sanders. Basically, they went after Kennedy Jr. on his promises to clean up corruption and stop the revolving door between industry and government, following reports that Kennedy attended multiple million-dollar dinners with big pharma executives at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago club. Now, here's the thing that a lot of you guys don't really understand or realize on an actuarial level. America can't afford to keep paying for Medicare and Medicaid at the level it is unless we get this whole country financially accounted for, do an audit, and figure out what we can afford and what we can't afford. Now, they found around $15 billion worth of Medicare fraud. That's going to help. But at the end of the day, right? We're talking about big, big money. We're talking about $1 trillion money. And so one of the big things that like people just don't understand is that these benefits, our ability to pay for them, the devaluation of the dollar, the devaluation of our reserve currency in, basically international use, these are all affecting our ability to go ahead and have benefits for those who can't work. Right, our fragile class, those individuals who are disabled, retired, widows, disabled adult children, children that are disabled, etc. Okay, so what happened was Warren, Wyden, and Sanders went after RFK. They said, hey, what the hell's going on? I'll read you the quote. It is unclear why you attended private dinners with big pharma executives at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago club following your promises to clean up corruption and stop the revolving door between industry and government. The pharmaceutical executives who attended Trump's dinners alongside RFK Jr. have repeatedly called on the administration to stop the Medicare drug negotiations that have already lowered prescription costs and could save taxpayers as much as $100 billion by 2032. Big Pharma stands to profit immensely from President Trump's abandonment of this and other policies that would bring drug prices down, such as patent reform. And then, of course, pharma officials have continued to lobby President Trump to weaken drug price negotiations in the months since the dinners. Quote, the dinners may have served as an opportunity for Big Pharma to gain insider access to both you and President Trump. Now, to be fair, these dinners are very expensive to go to, and the only people who can really afford to go to them are billionaires, big-time millionaires, and corporate interest personnel. Because, it's a write-off for whatever it's going to be. Now, quote, you owe the American public an explanation for why you took part in Big Pharma's influence peddling events with President Trump, what happened at these meetings, and whether they will affect your commitment to ensuring that Americans receive the relief they deserve from high drug prices, concluded the lawmakers. Now, if we're honest and we look at President Biden's actions with, it's like 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, all the way to 2026, and what would happen with Big Pharma, they did not negotiate the best of deals. They negotiated an okay deal for the reduction of costs of, some of the medications, some of the treatments. But all in all, they were not hyper aggressive because, to be fair, again, the Democrats and the Republicans both get funding for their campaigns specifically from Big Pharma. Now, here's the thing. We're now starting to see where there's articles coming out about RFK going after Big Pharma and big companies that create food and medicine for us. That's essentially, not good for us. And they're starting to back down. Here's an example. Mars just came out with one of these too, but Kellogg's becomes first company to sign legally binding agreement removing toxic dyes from cereals. Remember, a lot of these dyes are not even allowed in foods in some countries. Although in America is like one of those places where like they'll put ammonia in everything, right? They'll put petrol in everything. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at this. Okay. RFK Jr., about 40% of the food industry has made the commitment to remove dyes from their products. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins share an update on where the work on removing artificial dyes from food products stands on Kudlow. After months of investigation negotiations, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton announced Wednesday that Kellogg's will permanently remove toxic dyes from its cereals. Again, toxic dyes. Now, I've been eating these toxin dyes my entire life, and I'm sure it will shorten my lifespan, but this is a good move in the right direction because giving kids toxic dyes in their cereals, even though kids like bright colors, that's not a good thing. We got to figure out a way to go a different direction with that. Now, in a historic legal agreement, Paxton and Kellogg signed an assurance of voluntary compliance, which certifies that the company commits to removing artificial food colorings from its cereals by the end of 2027. Again, check out Mars too. They're going that route. They balked on it a bit, and now they're going with it. Okay. While other companies have verbally committed to removing food dyes, Kellogg's is the first to officially sign a legally binding agreement confirming that it will remove food coloring, according to Paxton's office. Protesters have urged Kellogg to cut artificial dyes from all of its breakfast cereals. Daniel Acker, So following months of investigation negotiation, I'm proud to officially say Kellogg's will stop putting these unhealthy ingredients in cereals. Paxton encouraged other food manufacturers to sign similar agreements to demonstrate their commitment to helping Americans live healthier lives. All right, so there are effects going on. There are things going on when it comes to big pharma, big medicine, big food, because remember, food is medicine. I don't know if you, some of you guys don't realize that, some of you don't think about that, but the quality of food that you eat is just like the quality of medication that you take. So for example, let's say that you have like a really crappy, end bottom of the barrel, type of cereal, right? You're just eating something that's like, the box is pretty much as healthy as the cereal. In that instance, it's like taking a bad, crappy, third-party medication. It's like you have the brand medication, then you have the non-brand medication, and then you have like that third party. Who the hell made that? We're not even sure ourselves. Why does it come in that colorless box with the script writing on it that doesn't really look like it's all the same font? That kind of stuff. So as a result, food and medication, they're the same thing. What we put in our body every single day creates the future human that we're going to be. Okay. Now, with that said, I just want you guys to understand there is going to be pushback from essentially these giant mega corporations known as pharmaceuticals. And some of the big things that they're going to do to go ahead and fight this situation. And let me point this out to you. Some of you haven't really thought about this, and I think it's important to go ahead and consider this. But you, as a Social Security recipient, get access to things like Medicaid and Medicare. Some of you are on Medicare Advantage plans. Again, real quick, my sponsor that I have, I don't do Medicare sign up. I don't go into Medicare a bunch. So I work with a group called Chapter, basically askchapter.org/disability, free Medicare help. And it's literally that. You call them and they look to see if you have a really good plan for yourself. And the bottom line is they'll do a tune-up on your Medicare plan if you need one. Like if you're on like the one that's really good for you, cool. If not, then they'll work with you to get you on one that's even better. But the bottom line is like, for your medications, your surgeries, your whatever, medical treatment, they can work with you and figure out the details. The other thing is there's so much fraud that they're catching in Medicare. You can always give them a call and ask if your current system, your current setup with your current doctors will be affected by it. But anyways, you can always give them a call at 339-226-6287. Again, 339-226-6287. Now, let's go through this real quick, okay? When it comes down to bottom line, this situation of pharmaceuticals having revenge or retaliatory conduct against Social Security recipients, that's going to be something that we need to watch because at the end of the day, these big farms, right, pharmaceutical companies, they like Social Security recipients a lot. They like them a lot. Well, think about it. Think about disability, right? Essentially, for you to have a valid claim for Social Security disability benefits or supplemental security income benefits for disability benefits, for you to have a valid claim, they expect you to be on Western medicine and use Western medicine, right? Because the whole idea is if you take the medication and it's not enough to go ahead and alleviate your symptoms to the point where you could go back to work, then they will consider giving you disability benefits. Now, I know some of you were found disabled 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and most people could get through the system then without a whole lot of difficulty. But now it is extremely difficult to get Social Security disability benefits. And people who lose their benefits and don't appeal them properly and have to restart, they don't get it. And I get calls. I had 3 today where people are like, I don't understand. I've already been found disabled. What the hell? And being found disabled previously is a form of evidence, but you go through the 8-step sequential process. And the bottom line is just to simplify, just to get past this point, if you were found disabled back in the day, easy peasy, easy peasy. You get found disabled nowadays, it's like winning a war. Okay. It's like literally winning a war. So the bottom line is, understanding that a lot of people get angry because they're like, look, I paid into this my entire life. The SSA would argue, yeah, well, people lie so that they don't have to work, so they get a check every month. Then people on the other side will say, well, it's not like it's a lot of money. I'd rather go work. And then the SSA would say, yeah, well, guess what? There's a lot of Americans who would never work, never wanted to work, don't have the interest in working, and they're lazy and they're not going to do it. So we got to check. And the people on the other side will say, yeah, that's true. There's some very lazy Americans out there that don't want to work, that just want to check. And but still, it's not enough money. Otherwise, I'd be working, right? And you go back and forth with these arguments. So, all right, here's the deal with it, okay? The pharmaceutical companies are likely to retaliate against those who are using their products in some way by doing side aggressive things, right? So one of them is regulatory bottlenecks. Okay, so Big Pharma has massive lobbying efforts with the FDA, general regulators, HHS, EMA. And so what the thing is that at the end of the day, if they wanted to punish people receiving new drugs that could potentially cure something, they would go ahead and push for very unusually, extraordinary, unprecedented long trial periods for the testing of these medications. So let me give you an example. If there was an AI cure discovered, right? AI could figure out what they would need to change in the body, and then they could take this pill that would have the CRISPR effect in it, and then that pill would magically make a protein not be able to, allow some other thing to form or reduce the likelihood of more of the forming of it. If AI were to create that, they could make some sort of trial system to test that medication that would take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years through the FDA or any one of these other programs that would administer and oversee basically that product. That is the main thing that they would begin to do when it comes to bottlenecking the system so that people couldn't get access to the cure. And then while they're waiting for access to the cure, they'd still have to use those pharmaceutical drugs that they had to treat the symptoms. Number two is basically a patent block. Patent blocks are part of intellectual property warfare. It's essentially one of those things where they do not allow for certain patents to be created. Now, let me give you an example of this, okay? When they go ahead and create a patent for something, right? It limits other researchers and other companies from outside of the United States from coming into this country with a product when they already create / own the patent on the thing that can fix the problem. So it will create essentially another bottleneck to not allow AI-driven companies, not allow other countries that have pharmaceutical companies that have made, created, distributed a cure to actually get it into this country. So you'll be seeing these big pharmaceutical companies not allowing, right, these patents to be played with, and they'll become hyper litigious in keeping other companies with AI that can figure out cures from getting their head above water. And don't think they're not going to work to change intellectual property law. The IP lawyers are going to go ahead and back them because they're going to be paid throughout the entire process of doing that. Now, the number one thing you're going to see from, these big pharma groups when it comes to retaliating against Social Security recipients is this market control. Okay, so they call it market control, market manipulation, and that's basically where a big company goes and buys out the smaller companies that are innovating the future of things. Now, what a lot of you don't realize, I think this is important, what a lot of you don't realize is that we will never know the statistics on how many companies are purchased by much larger industry leading companies that intend to use the product or intend to end the product. I believe, and I think the logic is pretty safe to assume, that mega big companies that control the marketplace ability of smaller companies to actually make products, I believe that the mega companies buy more smaller companies that come out with a disruptive product than the companies that come out with something that will enhance their product. Now, look, you could argue, well, look, Amazon, there's some company that makes an attachment for a main product. Main company buys the attachment product, fine. But that's not the ones that they pay a lot of money for. They pay a lot of money for the ones that's a small company making a disruptive product that works better than the Mega Machines product. They buy it and they destroy that company. And it's my belief, I think it's a pretty sound belief, that these mega companies actually buy more smaller companies that will disrupt their product and end them. And it's classic things. Like one of the classic ones that we study in school related to this topic is, of course, the digital camera. So remember, when you had like Kodak film, and you had film companies and they were buying digital, there were some startups that created this digital camera thing and they didn't like it because it was competing against the roll of film. Well, so they bought every company that would come up with a digital camera idea. They bought it, they killed it, it was over. And ultimately, they didn't innovate and push the design of it. And then at the end of the day, every cell phone, on the planet now takes photos. So who the heck's going to have a digital, or who's going to have a film camera, right? Some people still use DSLRs, but that's professionals doing, cinema. So the point that I'm getting at with this whole situation, I think it's pretty important, is that market manipulation is going to be the largest punishment to Social Security recipients as a retaliatory action on behalf of pharmaceutical companies because it's something they're good at. It's something that's quick, direct. They buy the smaller company, they kill off the product. It is what it is. Remember how they keep coming out, right? There's one company comes out with a laser that basically scans, sees a mosquito, and then shoots a laser beam, knocks off one of the mosquito's wings. The mosquito can't bite you then, right? One of those companies came out, said, yay, we're excited to do this. Boom, got bought up. Next company comes out from China, says, hey, we're going to do this. Boom, it's bought up and it's gone, right? Why? Well, think about all the mosquito repellent companies. Think about all the candle repellent companies. Think about all the screening companies that go ahead and keep mosquitoes out. Think about all the propane, catch all the mosquito companies with those propane devices. My point to you is, with this entire situation, is that market manipulation is going to keep more Americans sick longer, die, essentially down the line, while they're constantly paying in either through Medicaid or Medicare to these companies. Okay. Now, another thing is that Big Pharma is going to really push essentially the control of what's said, what's happening, because propaganda works. It works. And if I go back to like Biden era, right? Biden era was pushing this ideology of propaganda that like, you should put, immigrants that are, just fresh into this country in your house, and you should house them. And, culturally, you should accept them as they are. And, there was this giant push of that. And most Americans were like, that's insanity, absolute insanity. It's very potentially harmful and dangerous. And most people were like, no, there's no way I would ever do this, right? Because it's a conflict of cultures. If you have somebody that is like a classic, a Catholic versus somebody who's a strong believer in Islamic Hamas and things like that, then, you're going to obviously have some clashes there. That's not going to work out. So at the end of the day, just to be fair, like, it's just one of those things where there was a lot of propaganda, during the last presidential cycle. I'm not trying to beat up on Biden because he wasn't even there mentally for a lot of it. You know what I mean? It's just, it is what it is. Now we're seeing what they're coming out. We're seeing the issues and this and that. We're seeing, even some other people signed executive agreements on behalf of executive orders, rather, on behalf of him, which is just interesting. I mean, I just, usually don't see that, but you can see Trump now, he's trying to take advantage of that. He's trying to, every time he goes and signs one, big old Sharpie marker in front of the cameras, holds the folder up, here we go. So, you can see the politics being played by these two groups. Okay. So just expect that, a lot of these narratives will come out. Oh, this new CRISPR technology, they'll say it won't be safe, or the new medication won't be safe, or, this happened where this person passed away, and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. But remember, at the same time, they now have, and I forget which country it was, it's one of the Nordic countries up north, just found that the actual COVID vaccine did change the DNA sequence in people on one of the organs on our body. So I'm going to do a video on that. I have to read up on it and study it. But the bottom line is, what we're now seeing is that CRISPR technology was used for that. And when they promised it wouldn't actually do the things that they claimed, it surely did. And now it's a problem because people are like, oh man, and I remember I didn't want to take it. And my then girlfriend pushed me towards basically, getting the 2 shots. And I did it because I was trying to make her happy. But, I look back and I'm never doing that again. Experimental vaccination, experimental drug. I'm never doing that again. Like, that ain't ever happening again. Like, I'm never getting on that train again. That is just the dumbest thing I've done in a long time. Like, that's the dumbest thing I've done in a long time. So, all right. Now, there's another thing they have to keep in mind. Okay. Lawyers on behalf of pharmaceutical companies, my peeps, are going to be highly aggressive in supporting the pharmaceuticals because the pharmaceuticals are going to pay them a lot of money. And when they pay the attorneys a lot of money, they're going to go ahead and try and change laws, fight laws. You're going to be seeing them take up cases to the Supreme Court that normally you wouldn't see the effort to take them up because the money will be there. And remember, if you can take Supreme Court rulings, if you can take lower court rulings and you can swing it, you can do PR controls and you can do propaganda and push, then you can manipulate people into doing things. One of the things that's really interesting to me is, like, when you talk to people about the way things are, people's brains are not fact-finding, truth-seeking, wonderful, perfect things. Most people's minds are basically just willing to accept what is something that they expected to be, which is an interesting thing because, like, the brain is not good at facts. It's not good at truth. The brain is good at creating an expectation of what it already expects for you then to go ahead and see and interact with something that you feel is correct for whatever your brain is used to. And that's tough. A lot of people have essentially, I don't know, it's just one of those things where a lot of people, like, they don't realize it. They don't realize these weaknesses in their brain. So when it comes to, like, their ability to be like, is this a factual thing? Is this a truthful thing? They don't really spend time doing it. And so one of the things that a lawyer will see, like when we see the actual case briefs, when we go into Pacer and read what was going on, when we see the complaints and stuff like that, we get to see the actual level of total BS that's being done. And then when we look at the actual complaint, we look at the legal documents inside the court system, and then we see how the news took it and spun it and would do this massive spin on it. We're just like, well, you can't save the American public. They're just too easily defrauded of the truth. And that's it. You're defrauded of the truth. It's gone. You can't access it. And that's the thing is, if you said to a sample of 1,000 Americans, hey, I need you to read this legal document, and then you showed them news stories on it, they would be absolutely mind blown. They would be absolutely mind blown, because by the time the politicians get it and their sponsors get it, it's like a totally different swinging object. It's just totally different. The object is a different color. It's a different shape. It's a different this, different that. It's all these things. It's like the classic thing. When you hear the story, you're like, oh man, this kid attacked this other person. It's horrible. How dare they, right? But the kid is not a kid. The kid's 23 years old. He's 6'7". He weighs 285 pounds and works out of the gym every day. And by the time you guys catch up, right, your expectation of finding out the truth it's low. You don't care. You're past the story. It is what it is. So it's just always one of those weird things for me to see a lot of Americans get stuck in that, and they just go along with it and they just mow it up like they're a cow eating grass. And the field is, basically planted by the legacy news, which is of course owned by the mega sponsors that basically control the narrative. And it's like the John Mayer song. When you own the news, when you own the news stations, when you own the stories, you can feed people whatever you want. That's okay. As long as people just are happy, I guess, right? If Americans are happy, they keep voting for the same people. So that's what I've learned. If you have unhappy Americans, they don't vote the same person in. If you have happy Americans, they vote the same person in. That's what I've realized with this. Now, I want to go and, say another thing, okay? When it comes to AI is going to be able to, especially through quantum computing, literally, they have quantum computers now that are relatively small, that can process the entire knowledge of all things that the humans have ever created in milliseconds. Just let that sink in for a second. Not a second, but in milliseconds, everything that was ever written, everything that was ever known, every single scientific, understanding, reaction, every cosmological thing that we've ever come across, milliseconds entirely processed. And so what you have to understand, and that's not just absorbing, that's processing, having analytical ability over the information. So what you have to understand is that pharmaceuticals are either going to use AI to start creating cures and then, timeline out how they're released, or they're just going to have to fight other countries and other smaller companies that are going to constantly come out with these new cures. And that's the thing, is when these smaller companies and other countries with their pharmaceutical companies come out with cures, all of a sudden you're going to see those big pharmaceutical companies paying record amounts for some little dinky company. Let me give you an example, okay? Have you noticed that they are now talking that at some point there will be a $1 billion valuation on a company owned by a single person and run by a single person in the AI field? Same thing is going to happen to pharmaceutical. What they're saying is that there will be somebody who makes something in the AI field that is so destructive to the mega AI groups that are able to raise all this capital and have all these investments and do all that stuff, right? They will be able to have a single human being, a single person own an AI company, create an AI thing that's so disruptive to the mega brands that one person will be worth valuation or paid to be bought out $1 billion. Okay. So the point that I'm getting at with this situation, just so that you understand it, is that AI is going to change disability in a very big way. It's going to basically create a system where over time we will cure a lot of the impairments that people have. However, there's one big thing here you need to keep in mind. A lot of people who are retired, who were ill, a lot of people who were disabled and were ill are not going to be ready to go back to work. That's the truth of it, right? Because you're going to have to ramp that person up, get them used to 8 hours of work a day, get them used to having to go ahead and process this, move this object from here to here, type in this stuff into a CMS system, whatever. A lot of those individuals who have not been working over the past 15, 20 years are not going to want to go back to work. And when a cure comes out and the SSA starts saying, hey, we would like you to try this trial to see if you can go back to work, you are going to be seeing a lot of pissed off disabled people going, hey, what the hell? I already beat the Hunger Games. Now you're bringing me back into them? And that's what it's going to be like. It's going to be like the Hunger Games, except those who won at the Quota Quell are now going to be brought back into it. And they're going to be like, what the hell is this? So they may have some rules and regulations where, if a cure comes out for particular impairments, some people will try to just get more impairments on top. But the thing is, if they could be cured, right, you might see a cutoff. If somebody's on disability benefits and they're 60, it's a cutoff. If somebody's on disability benefits and they're 55, there might be some sort of cutoff. But the reality is, at the end of the day, you're going to be seeing a significant amount of people being cured. And you're going to be seeing a lot of SSA interaction with those companies that create these cures because they don't want to pay out disability benefits like they used to. Remember, the reason is relatively simple. Also, please remember, if you like these videos where you think about the future and think about what's coming up, please remember to like. Please remember to subscribe. Please remember to hit that like button. A lot of you don't hit the like button, hit that like button. With that said, you could be seeing a lot of people in the future where the SSA might come out and say, new directive, new policy, all people with this, congenital issue, all people with this ear issue, mouth issue, nose issue, eye issue, heart issue, lung issue, musculoskeletal spinal issue, whatever. All these people with this issue as their main impairment, this new cure has been released. You have a cure for AIDS, a cure for degenerative disc disease, a cure for, cancer of the lungs, a cure for this, a cure for that, a cure for this, a cure for this, a cure for trauma to the brain, right? They're going to come up with something that rebuilds the brain function. When that happens, you're going to be seeing a lot of people getting notices from the SSA through policy changes that we now expect individuals, right, who receive disability benefits or will receive disability benefits in the future, and it'll start as those who will receive it in the future. We now expect individuals, right? They won't start it with just the past people. They'll start it with going forward. You'll see individuals essentially, getting a notification, a letter that says, hey, we at the SSA believe blah, 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 right? And this is in the future. This is what they could potentially do. We expect you, yada, 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 to go ahead and take this medication or go to this CRISPR gene editing facility or go ahead and submit this to this facility to then be able to receive this vial of pills, which ultimately should reduce and or delete that impairment from your portfolio. When this happens, it will change essentially the marketplace of those who are sick. America, believe it or not, does not want sick people. They don't. Yes, disabled and retired people are great for the economy because guess what? They go ahead and get money and spend money. They get money and they spend money. It is a direct injection into the economy. But America doesn't love disabled people. America does not love retired people. America loves middle-class working people because they're the people who pay for all the poor and they're the people who help hold up the rich. So at the end of the day, what America really wants are middle-class working people. They want people who are employees to some system. That's the whole gig, the whole idea, the whole schmutz here. So my point to you is this, okay? The retaliatory conduct, just to summarize with this entire situation, is market manipulation. They're going to go ahead and buy the little companies. They're coming out with something that's going to mess up their big profit item. They're going to have intellectual property, patent restrictions. They're going to keep people from bringing out new stuff. They're going to essentially have a situation where they have, PR campaigns. They're going to have, ideas that are spread out to people. If you ever get a chance, look up what Santa Claus was in the very beginning. He wasn't this red suit, jolly person. There was like this whole dark narrative behind Santa. If you get a chance, go ahead and look up when the first cereal was created. It was beginning of 1900s. People had not had a bowl of cereal up until that point. Okay. And then after that, it was sold and pushed that cereal was super healthy. That's how you start your day. You put a banana on it, you get all your potassium out of it, all that stuff. The point is, pharmaceuticals have been selling you products to eat and enjoy and modify that will actually make you sick. Think about that for a moment. They sold you foods and medications that would make you sick so that they could find additional medications to fight those symptoms. That was the whole game. It was a brilliant game because it made billions upon billions and billions of dollars. All right. With that said, we're going to be doing basically the next video, which is essentially on all of Biden's immigrants, the migrants, the entrants who were some of them illegally here, who ultimately were caught because Trump is on a warpath to catch them. They were abusing Social Security benefits. They were abusing Social Security cards. We're going to go through that in the next video. Please remember to like and subscribe. Hit that like button. Don't be afraid to hit it. Also, please remember, if you really enjoy these videos, if you want to support the firm, I've been working at the firm for almost 12 years. Next month is officially 12 years. Head over to Disability Resolution Law Firm or Disability Resolution Florida. Throw that into Google. Find the business page. Throw some stars up there if you want. We always appreciate that. With that said, I go live on Mondays and Thursdays. I was too tired last night because I worked until around 2 a.m. and then I just gave up. I just gave up at that point because there was too much work. And I got to be honest with you, the way I do disability benefits, the amount of contact I have with my clients and interacting with the file and touching the file and reading it, running hearing questions with upcoming hearing claimants, we are coming to an era where it's not even going to be financially possible to do that. It's just not. It doesn't make enough money to go ahead and pay for the staff needed to actually do all that stuff. It's just, past 4 years have been a shit show when it comes to the valuation of the dollar. Cost of living adjustment was a total BS lie. Like when you guys got your 8%, your 5%, no. The price of items was going up 20%, 30%, 40%, stuff like that. Okay. It wasn't 8%. Wasn't 8%. You know what I mean? What an insult. What a massive insult and reduction of money you get each month. It pisses me off. And remember, you're talking about the grocery store. The business grocery store got a hell of a lot more expensive than the food grocery store. All right. So anyways, bottom line is Mondays and Thursdays usually go live. I'm going to go live tonight to answer questions for free. Next thing, just so you know, is that we do 1 hour and 30-minute sections where you can basically buy time. We do like these consultations where the mini contract is below where you can buy the time. It's usually at 12 noon or 3 p.m. where you can buy an hour, 30 minutes from me. We put you in between the hearings, and then I answer whatever questions you have about stuff. I'll catch you a little bit later. You have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will see you at the next video in about 5 minutes. Attorney Walter Hnot, I'll catch you soon. And please remember, Wednesdays, tomorrow, I go work with the homeless at the homeless facility, the SRC in Orlando. So the bottom line, just to be clear, Wednesdays, you're not going to get a hold of me on the phone unless it's way later in the day. You're going to get back office on the phone. They're going to interact with you. Wednesdays, I work with the homeless. I'll catch you later. I'll catch you in the next video, and we'll go from there. Attorney Walter Hnot, thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.